It's That Skydive Sim Guy podcast where we discuss skydiving stories as well as give some great tips, whether it's the real world or the virtual world. This podcast is made possible by Skydive Sim, the world's most advanced skydiving simulator. Hey, it's That Skydive Sim Guy here today with John Borgonovo. How are you, John?
Good, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. We tried shooting this thing last week when we had Hurricane Beryl come through, and I lost internet, so here we are recording over. So tell me a little bit of background about you.
So I got out of the Army in 2017, and then I started working as a tech, and one of the biggest things that I'd wanted to do when I was in was jump out of airplanes, mainly because I had a big fear of heights. So I did my first tandem, absolutely loved it, started jumping, got quite a few jumps under my belt before I even thought about becoming an instructor. It kind of came up as a surprise. Somebody's like, hey, you can get your instructor ratings. I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? I love it. So I went and started doing tandems, did a bunch of tandems, and now I'm more of a kind of a part-time backup tandem instructor. I'm into a lot of canopy piloting, trying to do, high-performance flocking, swooping, trying to get into a high-performance crew on the canopy side. And XRW, hopefully, eventually. I'm not on a high enough wing loading yet, but that would be the eventual goal with that.
Cool. So you say it kind of somebody told you that you can be an instructor. How many jumps you had at that point?
I had probably almost 500 at that point, and I was just excited to get my D license. And they're like, "Oh, you're gonna get your tandem rating?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?"
Yeah, why not? Right?
Awesome. Why not?
Yeah, I've thought about it too. The thought of jumping out with someone and sharing that experience with them for the first time is pretty cool. I've seen it on the plane from other people jumping and sometimes me chasing them, but it's got to be awesome when you're actually taking them, right?
Yeah, the doing outside video, you get an even more unique perspective. You get to see right into their face, kind of like you get to see their soul when they realize they're about to jump out of a plane for the first time. That's kind of a cool thing. You don't really get to see them when you're the instructor, but you get to feel the energy, and it's probably the coolest thing is taking people on their first time, especially that are really excited or really nervous, and seeing them get over that fear. Because that was my motivation to do my first one, is get over that like almost crippling fear of heights. So
makes sense. Yeah. So when you open up the canopy, I guess that's when you can finally actually talk. Or
yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you get under canopy is when they kind of dump all over you everything that they thought about the jump and how awesome or how scary it is and stuff. And that's a cool spot. I like to try to keep the camera on them for those first few seconds after the canopy opens, because some people really like tell you exactly what they felt.
That's awesome. So tell me, as far as how did you get started? What was your first jump like?
My first jump was at the jumping place in Statesboro. We had to go up twice because the first time it was very overcast and there was clouds. Way too many, we had to turn around and land, and everybody got low motion sickness or whatever. We went up again, tried it again. This time we did jump. There may have still been some clouds, or a lot. We ended up landing like 3 miles away in somebody's front yard right before it started pouring rain. It was looking back on it, it was an eventful first tandem. It was an amazing experience. I knew I was going to keep doing it within the first few seconds of free fall. It's an unreplaceable experience. You can't get it anywhere else.
That's definitely a good memory to have for your first jump. I don't know, good or bad, depending on how you look at it. I think first-time jumpers normally are super nervous. I was worried, are we going to jump? I don't want to be a statistic. But yeah, I mean, to end up having to land off, that definitely adds to the excitement.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
My first tandem instructor, he was very good. His name was Justin. He was actually one of the guys who died in the plane crash that happened a few months later. And the only survivor from that plane crash was my best friend, Will, who actually ended up being the one to coach me ever since, from the time I got solo certified in AFF all the way up until I started learning how to wingsuit at, 199 jumps, all the way to, doing some of my tandem training jumps. So we've really, come up from 10 jumps and 300 jumps to I'm at 1,800-ish, and he's at 2,300-ish now.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's awesome. So tell me, I think you told me when we were talking last that you actually pushed yourself and did things that you shouldn't do once you got your A license. Tell me a little bit about that. That was a pretty cool story.
So I like to go fast. I always liked to go fast. Before I was skydiving, I was drag racing. I had a, fast Camaro and a Hayabusa, and I used to race both of them pretty much anywhere. So I always wanted to go fast, whether it was in free fall. I was trying to break 200 miles an hour while I was still working on my A license, just trying to see how much I could hold head down and stuff like that. So of course I was always wanted to go faster under canopy as well. So I managed to, there was two identical rigs with a 230 and a 210. So I managed to swap those out during AFF around like jump 3 or 4. They didn't notice. I was like, cool, it flies even better, So at that point I was like, yeah, what's the next smallest size? So, I was trying to try to 190, and I was supposed to get a Pulse 170, which is what the person, the DZO at the time, was saying was a good first canopy for me. And it was going to fit into the cheap little Javelin that I'd purchased at the time. And I'm talking to a few people like, oh, the Pulse is slow. And I'm like, no, I don't want slow. So I called PD and I switched my order to a Sabre 2150. So of course, I got a stern talking to from that. Did a canopy course, jumped that for a while. That was probably a slightly reckless downsize, but it didn't come close to the next one, which was around 200 jumps. And that was a Stiletto 120, which I was loading at just under 1.9. So at 200 jumps, that was probably a bit more than what I should have been on. Did definitely had a couple of close calls. One of them, I took a chunk off the ground with my butt on landing. No major injuries for that, luckily. And the other time, not realizing the shortness of the control range on that, coming from a Sabre 150 to a Stiletto 120, which I don't know if you've ever flown a Stiletto, the control range is like short. You don't go deep in the toggles. And I went into spinning line twist at about 1,400 feet, spiraling down from an outside video. And that kind of put the hey, wake up, dummy. Like, you're not supposed to do that kind of stuff. You could very easily get in over your head on something like that. I mean, I think that was the first time where I kind of got that gut check of like, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. So after that, my next downsize was around 400 jumps. That's when I went to a Velo 103, and then another downsize, another 100-something jumps later to a Velo 96, which was very similar to me, at least, how they flew. I didn't feel like that was a particularly scary one. I think the biggest one was really the Sabre 150 to Stiletto 120.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I went on the Velos, I started doing canopy courses with Kerr Bartholomew, pretty much every downsize, and every downsize since then. I think I'm going to do that as well. It's just feel like that's what's a big reason why I haven't, gotten majorly injured, is because when I do downsize, I go and get some coaching. So,
yeah, makes total sense. I thought I downsized fast when I got my A license, but you definitely got me beat. My very first one, I think it was a 260 they put me on, which was like a 0.75. It was super slow. Even the instructor was like, this is probably too slow. So by my second one, it was 230 all the way through AFF. And I think once I got my license, I was like, man, I'm going to try 210. And then by my 30th jump, I'm like, which is 5 jumps on that thing? And then I'm like, man, let me just try a 190. I do 10 jumps with that, and then I'm thinking about buying something. I'm like, well, I'm probably going to outgrow this. Got 170. And after doing some jumps on that, not even probably 10 jumps on one of my landings, I hurt my ankle. And at the time, I was like, there was an ant pile, or this, all sorts of excuse. It wasn't because I downsized too fast, is what I would keep telling. Well, they didn't know I downsized too fast, but I think I was telling everybody else. This is the excuse why I hurt myself. But I admit it now. I think the canopy was too fast for me. I downsized too fast. And yeah, it happens. I could have gotten even more hurt. But I guess silver lining for this would be I actually thought about Skydive Sim at that time. I was like, man, it would be nice if there was a simulation that I could come down and kind of build that muscle memory by flaring. Because whenever I would come down after hurting my ankle, I was PLFing. It's like, oh man, the ground's coming. So that's where Skydive Sim, you can say, was born. So you and I actually met because of Skydive Sim. I remember going through the messages from a couple of years ago, and you had tried it out and you were giving me feedback, and it was excellent feedback too, because by now we've actually got a lot of the things that you mentioned then into the sim. One of the last ones was souping, and now we have the souping in there with the pond. So tell me a little bit about your early look at Skydive Sim and then what you think now.
So earlier on, I don't remember the exact timeline of when I got my first VR headset, which is this guy right here. It's just a Quest 2. I don't remember the exact date that I got it. I think it was right when it first came out. So whenever the Quest 2 first came out, but I believe I had started skydiving shortly before that. And one of my first thoughts was, wow, like, I wonder, what kind of skydiving-ish things there are on this that I could do virtual reality-wise and how realistic they are. And my first game was Rush, which is the wingsuiting one. And I want to say I'd already wingsuited because I started wingsuiting right at 200 jumps. It didn't take me very long to do that. So I want to say I'd already been wingsuiting because I remember thinking as soon as I played it, like the physics are way off. It's fun. It's certainly a pleasurable game to play, but as a simulator, it's kind of like some of these other flight games on the Quest, like World of Warplane specific and stuff, where like it's a fun game, but you're not flying 10 miles an hour while shooting torpedoes at a ship. Like, you're way beyond the stall point. It doesn't work as a simulator. And it was kind of the same way for Rush for me. Like you could fly, way beyond the actual limits of what a wingsuit would be able to do. So it didn't really have that simulator kind of feeling. When I played Skydive Sim for the first time, I was like, this is way better as far as the physics. I just noticed a few things, that I thought would definitely improve it, especially the canopy flying part. Because it's a lot easier to make the canopy flying part seem immersive and realistic than it is the free fall part. Because there's a lot less forces like wind and all that kind of stuff that act upon you at free fall. And you could also simulate the feeling of it on your body by just being in a hanging harness. So all those things that I thought about at first that I messaged you about, man, within like a few updates, you'd like already put those into play and like exceeded it. I thought it was 100% better already. And then every update since then, it seems like it just gets a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. I even tried playing it in the hanging harness once. Very, very accurate. Like I like how, it feels right. It's definitely something that, especially now with the new canopy customization stuff that you can do, I'm still playing around with it, trying to get it to fly, as close as possible to my real life one. But it's awesome. It's very viable as a trainer for students or for people even at higher levels that are trying to get a little bit of an edge on that.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're different than games because I went into it thinking I want more of a simulator than a game, which, Rush is a great game. And I mean, that's one of the first games I played when I got my headset as well, because man, it's like you're wingsuiting. I even would try to lay on my ottoman in the living room and try to put my hands back here and go, okay, let me see. But it wouldn't work because they made it fun. And
it lost the tracking of the hands.
Yeah, you got to have it. You got to have it fun. I mean, if you're a game, you definitely got to make it interesting because the average user is probably not a wingsuiter or a skydiver. Right. In Skydive Sim's case, I mean, it was built, like I said, because I wanted something that I can practice with. And I thought VR really has gotten to a point where it's good enough to where you can actually use it as a simulator. And it's so natural because you got two controllers. For a canopy control, it's perfect. I mean, Absolutely. 2 controllers and a headset. And my goal was always to get something on the Quest where you don't have to have a computer set up. And technology has come such a long way, which is great. And it's just evolving more and more. Now, you said you did it in a hanging harness. I think it's like the ones where you practice the cutaways.
So the one we have at our drop zone is actually one of the ones that used to be a student rig whenever I first started, which is kind of funny. It's come full circle. We have it just kind of hanging off the Raptors and the DZ. So, a couple of times I'd go up there to kind of use the hangar as to play the Quest because, in a camper, you have like 4 feet by 6 feet. And some of these games need a little bit more room than that. So I go up there, I get in the hanging harness and just kind of play around with it. And, it's something that I can play right here where I'm sitting. And it's very, it's very comfortable and I can play it like that for hours if I want to. But putting it in the hanging harness, the only thing that felt not right to me in the hanging harness was that I'm so used to doing like a little bit of harness movement and responding and it doesn't really. So.
Yeah. I catch myself doing that even when I'm sitting down. I move my leg over and try to like turn. And then I remember there is no input for that yet, I should say, because the sensors are coming. So you can add the sensors in there and eventually have that. So that would be awesome. And I do have somewhat of a harness set up. It's more like a swing from the ceiling for me. So I put a little bottom under so I could sit in it. But for mine, because it's more like just two lines coming down, it swings way too much to be realistic. But still, even that, just going into the mountain scenes and just kind of trying to do lines down the mountain, it was a lot of fun. You just get a little bit more because you're kind of hovering at instead of just sitting in a chair. So that was kind of fun.
Absolutely, yeah. The mountain map is by far my favorite. That's the one I've played probably for every run I've done on another one. I've done 8 on the mountain map. It's definitely awesome.
You mean the one that's named Hawaii now, or that's the one you can? Yeah,
the one with the mountain where you can kind of, if you open over the crest, you just go all the way down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got to change those names now because I'm catching myself always talking about mountains, and I actually have another scene in there called Mountains, but it's really a DZ that's kind of in the middle of mountains. So I think I confuse a lot of people when I'm talking about which map. So I'm glad we actually said that. Maybe that's something I'll do in an update so we can be more clear on it. So you said you dial in your canopy. Did it take you a long time to figure out how it works, or you just kind of got in?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's definitely not perfect yet. I'm just trying to. It's kind of hard to get the the exact fit to where it feels really right. But it's definitely gotten a lot closer than where for where I started. I think when I started, I was making way too big adjustments, and but now it's pretty close. I'm still kind of playing with the settings just a little bit at a time, trying to get it a little bit more closer. But yeah, it's also like you said with the harness controls, it's that part isn't quite the same yet. But obviously, without sensors that would measure the harness, there's no way to actually doing that. I did think it was awesome that you added the front risers thing in there, which is great.
I've been having a lot of fun with that. In fact, just last night, I went into the Statue of Liberty Island. I did the night one, and I mean, now I can go very close to the top of the Liberty Island and then use the fronts to dive in and then just go into that target, which is a lot of fun. It's I hadn't done that before because I hadn't really been in that scene in a while, actually. At least not since we added the front risers. And now with that, it just makes it so much more fun to really get close to that statue and then just dive it right in.
Absolutely.
So a lot of fun, yeah. So let's see. I remember asking you this again, when we were trying to record and my internet got caught because of Barrel, which, it hit us hard. But you were telling me about your memorable stories. So tell me about that.
Oh, let's see. I actually, which one did we start with last time?
We had a few. I think one that got stuck in my head was, I think, when you were trying to swoop all the way in almost to the hangar and you got caught to the side of it.
I lost my velo. Yes.
Yeah.
So I had that Velo 96 I was telling you about. I got it for $700 with a removable slider. Good deal on it. And I was swooping it pretty comfortably, doing 270s. And I was thinking like, I'd like to, swoop into the hangar, come ripping in, drop down, slap it down, get it packed right there. Don't even have to walk in. That'd be cool. And one day when there was pretty much no wind, I was like, let me just kind of set up, I'll set up kind of deep. So I'm not swooping into the hangar, but I'm essentially swooping up to and then kiting in. And that's when I found out that would have been a terrible idea because the lines were just long enough to hook on the top of the door, and ripped the whole side of my Velo open when I ran it in. And of course, I was pretty sad about that. And then boss was like, don't even worry about it, man. You need a better canopy anyway. It's time for an Airwolf. I was like, those are expensive. But he was right. It's not even in the same league. He told me to go with the same size, and I was like, "Oh man, I like to go faster." He's like, "Trust me on this. You're gonna go faster." Okay. Like Airwolf 96, Airwolf 2 96 came in, and Oh my God. I'm glad I didn't downsize. I spent the first few jumps on it doing the oscillation thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so sensitive, you're automatically overcorrecting if you're not used to something that sensitive.
Wow.
So it took some getting used to, even at the same size that I'd already had, a couple hundred jumps on. So
So the harness input just really takes over?
Yeah.
Like every little bit?
If you build speed and you kind of load one side and then snap the other, all harness, you can damn near barrel roll it just on harness. It's extremely sensitive.
That's pretty cool. It reminds me of, I haven't done many wingsuit jumps, but I did. I did 3 of them. And it was in the middle of summer a few years ago in Houston, which is hot. I mean, we get 100, 104 degrees. So putting on a wingsuit, very tight. I don't like the confined feeling. And I went up with my coach. And I remember my very first one in the door. As soon as I went out, I'm just in a spin until I remembered arch and get out of it. And then I got it under control, and my coach comes up and gets right next to me. And I just did, hey. And I went, started just diving again. I'm like, okay. Movements have to be super small. Okay. But yeah, by my third one, it was awesome that day, but it was hot. So I told myself I'll go back to wingsuiting, but I just haven't yet. And I think I will at some point. It's a lot of fun. I was coming up, like you can see coming up on a cloud. It's just, you're just gliding. It's like you're in an airplane, but you're out in the open. So a lot of fun.
Cloud surfing is actually probably one of the funnest things in a wingsuit. I only have about 50, 60 wingsuit jumps, which is when I started playing around with that when I had about 200. But I kind of got away from it with the canopy progression. You're not jumping a wingsuit with a stiletto 120 or with a velo.
Yeah.
Or some people do. They got bigger balls than I do. But so I haven't really gotten to that. But cloud surfing being the thing that I love doing the most with the wingsuit, with a high performance canopy, you can do the same thing with not as much speed, of course, but it gives you even more range to where you can really, go over to the next cloud and really carve down the side of it. I have some really good videos of me and a couple other guys on airwolves and werewolves and stuff like that for the DZ to, when we get some good puffies that we go and shred down the side of them.
That's awesome, man. So let me ask you this now. As far as at your DZ, do you ever show Skydive Sim to other jumpers? Do you have friends that you guys play with? Or
So there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and this is a thing that's just a VR wide kind of thing. A lot of people will put this headset on that I've talked to about that, and they'll be like, I immediately got dizzy or got motion sickness or whatever the case may be, and they just really can't play much of any game on there that's not super comfortable.
This is the intense for sure,
right? So a lot of people, I haven't really gotten a chance to really show them much of it because of that. I have shown a few people, especially, other skydivers who also play VR games, and several of them have played it and loved it. And I'm pretty sure several of them that have Quest as well have gotten it for theirs.
Yeah. So we did add a feature in there a while back. It's field of view limiter, which actually, the more speed you have, the more it just darkens the edges. That's to help with the motion sickness. But yeah, I mean, I tell people this is not the kind of game where you just buy a VR headset and this is your first game or your only game. It takes time to get used to VR. I remember even for me when I was, building it, it was actually the toughest because the wing wasn't stable at all at first. So I would get in there, don't know what I'm going to get. And sometimes it would just start flipping me backwards and going this way. And I would literally be able to do this for maybe a few hours per day. And then I wasn't able to continue because I was dizzy and I had to just put it down and say, I can't test it until we got it stable enough to where, okay, it's moving at least somewhat to a direction and behaving as I was hoping it would behave. So yeah, it's been a long process of getting it to where it is, to where it's still, I know it can mess with your mind because your mind is thinking, I'm moving, but you're really sitting stationary somewhere or standing stationary somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me, what else? Do you do anything besides skydiving? Any kind of other kind of wings?
So as far as flying sports go,
Yeah.
I picked up paramotoring also due to my friend Will, who he's strong armed me into so many sports. I swear, he got me into scuba.
Great friend.
I can't
Yeah.
even swim, man. So we picked up paramotoring. We did paramotoring and did our first paragliding flight in Costa Rica. So I got a little bit of paragliding, gotten pretty decent at paramotoring. I'm on a intermediate wing there. Other than that, flying wise, I think that's about it. We also do some snowboarding during the winter season, and we just started doing that last winter. Got all of our gear together at the end of the winter, so we're good to go for the next one. And then scuba diving recently, we just got our open water. I just got my open water. He's actually getting his instructor
Advanced
ratings now.
Oh, instructor. Okay.
So yeah, I'm actually due for my advanced in a couple of weeks in August.
Nice.
So yeah, we're getting after it.
So you're going to do the whole blue hole thing in Belize where you jump out of a plane, land in water, get into scuba gear and go under?
If somebody has a rig that they don't mind me putting in seawater, yes. But my rig, absolutely not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had friends that have done that jump. I've been wanting to do it, but I just never got around to it. And from what they told me, I think they went on a boogie, and there are riggers that actually have throwaway rigs that you can just get.
Right.
And that's what you fly, basically, when you're doing something like that. So you don't put yours in the water. Yeah.
I told myself I wouldn't buy anything new except for my first canopy, which that was a dumb decision to buy it new, but that's another conversation altogether. When I got my tandem rating and I had about 500 tandems is when I was like, okay, my rig's woefully oversized for the canopy that I'm jumping now. You know, like the 103 cross brace was already a very loose fit in there. I was with the 96. I was having to make my closing loops look like Tyrion Lannister, and it was very it was getting to where it was a little short, you know, or a little small for the rig. So then I went and I got a Peregrine Falcon, the new one that had come out. Got it, you know, nice with some custom embroidery on it. And of course the Airwolf was new as well. And then I got an Optima Reserve as opposed to the Micro Raven that I'd been jumping, which is a terrible reserve to jump if you're loading it over 1-to-1, by the way. Can personally vouch for that one. And that I mean, other than that, you know, I'm not taking $10,000+ and going into seawater with it on purpose.
Oh no, not for, yeah, definitely not. But yeah, it's something I want to do at least once. You know, that's just a beautiful area to jump over, and being able to just go. I have dived the blue hole, but we got to it by a boat, so it wasn't the same. It's still beautiful down there, but yeah, I definitely would want to do the jump one day. I even thought about adding that to Skydive Sim, but it's, you know, it's still in the back of my head and on a very long list of features I need to add to it. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can talk a long time. I know I'd love to bring you back sometime. You know, we've been talking a while. I mean, I'd love to get more stories from you, so maybe bring you back, and hopefully I want to see you in the game. Maybe we do some multiplayer pretty soon here.
Okay.
Sounds good?
All right. Well, I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll catch you later.
No problem, man. Thank you.